going to be able to stop this assault on Aleppo by the Iranians, by the Russians, by the Syrian army of Bashar al-Assad?
I don't think we can stop it, and unfortunately I think it's going to have the effect of simply lengthening this horrible civil war in Syria. They may go in, they may recapture some of these cities, but they're not going to be able to hold them, not unless the Iranians, the Lebanese, and the Iraqi Shia plan to long-term occupy Syria. That will just foment more of the sectarian conflict and just prolong the war. So it's a tragic step backward. You know, we had been seeing perhaps some light at the end of the tunnel as Assad was weakening. There was increasing pressure to come to the table for a negotiated end. But this lifeline now by Hezbollah, by the Russians and Iranians, is merely going to prolong the agony for the Syrian people.
And let's not forget, what, 200,000 or 300,000 people have already been killed in this 4-year civil war. Hundreds of thousands have been injured, and millions have been made homeless, refugees internally, externally, and that's presumably only going to continue.
It is going to continue, and it's terrible. We haven't seen a refugee crisis like this since the end of World War II. It is the humanitarian catastrophe of our time.
So is the U.S. leaving these people high and dry?
No, we're not. And in fact, I think we are increasing our support for the opposition. You can certainly count on the fact that the Gulf nations are going to do the same. That's what we see in this region when you have a push here now by the Russians and Iranians. You're going to see an equal and opposite reaction, particularly by the Gulf nations. But yes, we're upping our support as well, because ultimately the only way to bring this conflict to an end is to phase Assad out. As long as he is there, there is going to be oxygen for this insurgency, and this civil war is going to drag on.
I assume you agree with other U.S. analysts that these Russian airstrikes are primarily going after these U.S.-backed rebels who oppose Bashar al-Assad's regime.
They're going after moderate rebels that we support. They are going after the al-Qaeda franchise as well. They are not going after ISIS. That is really not their primary motivation. It's all about propping up the regime. At some point, they may come into conflict with ISIS, but that is clearly their lowest priority.
Is there anything the U.S. can do to stop that?
There's nothing we can do, and we're not going to go to war with Russia. But I think we can continue to support the moderate opposition. That will have the effect of raising the cost to the Iranians and to the Russians. And we'll see, whether that causes the Russians to consider, does this continue to make sense? They're going to run into the same problems that we have in trying to accomplish this all through the air. They may take ground. They're not going to be able to hold it.
But they do have the support of the regular Syrian military, which is part of the Bashar al-Assad regime. They have support of the Iranian troops. Barbara Starr now reporting 2,000 Iranian troops have gone into Syria. There are a lot of Hezbollah fighters who are working with the Iranians, who are supporting the regime as well. So this Russian organized alliance is pretty formidable.
It is formidable, but that alliance nonetheless is going to be taking increasing casualties over time. And we'll have to see how many casualties over what period. Is Iran willing to endure? Is Lebanon willing to endure through Hezbollah? And are the Russians willing to endure?
Can you confirm that there are 2,000 Iranian troops inside Syria right now?
I can't confirm the numbers. I think unquestionably there are Iranians in Syria helping to direct operations, helping to be a part of ground forces, but in terms of the numbers, that's not something I can confirm.
One of Iran's, if not the top military commander over there, Major General Qasem Soleimani, he's reportedly in Syria right now. This is an Iranian, as you well know, who's got a lot of American blood on his hands when he was organizing fighters inside Iraq to go after U.S. troops there. What can you tell us about his involvement, direct involvement in Syria?
Well, it's been very interesting over the last several years as he has raised his public profile. This was somebody who operated mostly in the shadows, did not want much of a public face. And now we see him cropping up everywhere, proud of his involvement. The Iraqis are proud to showcase him, the Iranians as well. This is obviously a very high priority for Iran. But it's a very high-risk endeavor for them, too, as they're about to find out.
All right, Congressman, stand by. We have more to talk about, including these new reports that the director of the CIA, the Secretary of Homeland Security, had their private email accounts hacked. We're going to get into that and much more when we come back. Congressman, it's pretty awkward, to say the least, very embarrassing if, in fact, the director of the CIA, the Secretary of Homeland Security, their private email accounts were hacked by this individual.
Yes, and it's more than embarrassing. It's very much, I think, a risk for these individuals to have their private accounts hacked into. Even if it's not classified information, they still may have personal things that they don't want out in the public ethosphere. So it's of grave concern. I think it highlights, Wolf, that none of us are really safe in this environment. If you're a major American company and you haven't been hacked yet, you just don't know it yet. And I think all of our personal email is really vulnerable to this kind of hacking, so it's a grave risk.
So should people who have sensitive information, whether the legislative branch like you or in the executive branch, no longer have any private Gmail or AOL or Yahoo or any kind of accounts right now?
Well, you know, I think as a practical matter, we have personal lives that we want to continue leading. But, you know, we probably ought to live by the maxim, which is easier said than done, which is don't put anything in an email you don't want to see printed on the front page of the local paper. It's a good rule of thumb, because at the end of the day, none of this can be guaranteed to remain private.
So I assume you have a government account, but you also have a private account, is that right?
Sure.
But are you worried that your private account, there have been government accounts that have been hacked as well, including State Department accounts, OMB accounts. There have been government accounts that have been hacked.
Well, you know, I assume, frankly, that any account, public or private, that I use, if somebody wants to get in bad enough, they're going to get in.
Look ahead to Thursday. Hillary Clinton is going to be testifying for about 8 hours, we're told, before the Select Committee on Benghazi. You're a member of that committee. You have no confidence in what Trey Gowdy, the chairman, is doing now, I understand.
I think the committee has been thoroughly discredited, not just by the comments of Kevin McCarthy or Richard Hanna, or by the statements of the GOP whistleblower who was part of their own staff, but frankly by the committee's own actions. We had a dozen hearings we were supposed to have this year that the majority said we'd have with people like the defense chief and the head of the Joint Chiefs and the head of the CIA at the time of Benghazi. Canceled all of them, every single one except Hillary Clinton. You look at the press they put out, 25 press releases since March, 20 of them all about Clinton and the State Department, only 5 about anything else. You look at the witnesses they're interviewing. You look at the witness interviews that the chairman chooses to attend. For all the importance that he puts in these witness interviews, he's only gone to about 10 out of the 50, and of those 10, there's a heavy focus on those staff surrounding Hillary Clinton. So the actions of the committee are just very telling. So
your responsibility, your job on Thursday as a Democratic minority member of this committee will be what?
Well, look, we'll try to see something productive that can be gained from this testimony. We'll certainly want to ask the Secretary about the security at embassies, what we can learn from the Accountability Review Board, how those recommendations have been put into effect. But she's testified twice before Congress. She's not presently in charge of security at our facilities, so there's limits to what she can productively add. We're also, I think, though, going to play a vital role in making sure that she gets a chance to ask the questions, and that when Republican members, if they selectively choose quotes out of context or lines from documents without giving the rest of the story in those documents, that the Secretary is given a chance to read the full document. Very
quickly, you said Trey Gowdy had not attended sensitive meetings that you think he should have attended?
Well, you know, actually, I think in the chairman's defense, of these 50 witnesses that they keep trumpeting, many of them are completely duplicative of other witnesses. Some are IT people or they're Clinton press people. They don't add that much value to the investigation. Many of them were already interviewed by the Accountability Review Board. So, frankly, I can see why the chairman hasn't gone to the vast majority of these witness interviews. I haven't either. Most of the members haven't. But to trumpet their importance and then not attend, I think there's a certain discrediting quality to that.
We'll have extensive live coverage on Thursday of these 8 hours or so. We'll see how long it goes of these hearings. We'll watch very closely. Thanks very much, Adam Schiff, Democrat of California. Coming up.